Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of precision.
Right, like engineering or something.
Exactly. Like
Yeah.
you break your arm, the X-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points and says, well, there it is. Broken.
Yeah.
It's incredibly clean.
It is, and it's comforting, honestly, because we crave visibility.
We really do.
I mean, we want to categorize a problem so the solution becomes obvious, put a cast on it, wait 6 weeks, and, the organism heals itself.
But then you step into the world of human development, and specifically the landscape of public education.
Right.
And suddenly that X-ray machine is just completely broken.
Yeah.
We're looking at a diagnostic landscape that is murky, to put it mildly.
Oh, absolutely.
We're taking a deep dive today into the American public education system.
Yeah.
And right now, based on the data we're seeing, and specifically notes from a 30-year veteran teacher we're going to call Papa Bear, that system isn't just fractured.
No, it's not.
It is actively breaking the people trying to hold it together.
Yeah, and if you are listening to this right now, you really need to understand the stakes here.
For sure.
Even if you don't have children in the school system, even if you haven't stepped foot in a public school in decades, you live in the society that this system produces.
That's the key point.
Right. The public education system is the engine of the future. It dictates the economic capability, the civic responsibility, and really just the social cohesion of the next generation.
Yeah.
And right now, based on the hard data and the boots-on-the-ground anecdotes from our sources, that engine is throwing sparks.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we have a massive amount of ground to cover today.
We really do.
We're drawing on a really dense, fascinating collection of notes titled The Crisis and Culture of Modern Public Education. And our mission here is to pull apart the physical spaces our kids are learning in, the financial traps keeping those spaces overcrowded, and the intense psychological wars happening in the teacher's lounge.
It's a lot to get through.
It is. So if we are diagnosing this system, Papa Bear's central thesis, which he anchors to the perspective of Dr. Jordan Peterson, actually, it starts with the physical room itself.
Right, the actual space.
Yeah. He argues that the standard public school model, sitting in a room of 25 to 35 students, is fundamentally broken by design.
And to really understand that claim, we have to look at the reality of human cognition.
Okay.
When Papa Bear brings in Peterson's framework, he's pointing to the wide natural distribution of cognitive abilities among any given population.
Let's break down what that cognitive distribution actually looks like for a teacher standing at the whiteboard. Because, they aren't looking at factory parts coming off a conveyor belt with the exact same specification.
Oh, not at all. It's not a monolith.
Right.
In any random grouping of, say, 30 kids, you have a massive variance in processing speed.
Right. Some kids just get it instantly.
Exactly. You have some students whose working memory can hold like 5 steps of a math problem at once, and others who lose the thread after step 2.
Oh, yeah. I was definitely a step 2 kind of kid with math.
Right. And on top of that, you have varying attention spans, different levels of emotional regulation, and drastically different intrinsic motivations.
Which can change daily, right?
Oh, completely. It could just be based on what happened at their breakfast table that morning.
So if you're the teacher and you are literally forced to deliver one lesson to 30 distinct, diverse minds simultaneously, what happens? You aim for the middle.
You have absolutely no other choice. And aiming for the middle means the one-size-fits-all approach inevitably fails the individual.
It has to.
Right. Because you bore the advanced students into disengagement because you're moving too slowly.
Yeah.
And then you leave the struggling students hopelessly behind because you're moving too fast for them.
It's a lose-lose.
It really is. The only pedagogical way to accommodate that wide natural distribution is through individualized instruction.
Which you mathematically cannot do when you are managing 30 distinct human beings. It's just a time economy problem.
Precisely. It comes down to time. And this leads to a very specific, scientifically backed ideal that our source material highlights.
Yeah, let's get into the number.
The optimal number for a classroom, particularly in those foundational early years, is around 17 students.
17.
Yes, 17.
I want you, the listener, to just pause and think back to your own education. How many of us were ever in a public school class of 17?
Probably very few.
Right. Sounds like a luxury. But the data backing this up is incredibly heavy. The notes point to this landmark research, specifically the Tennessee Student-Teacher Achievement Ratio study.
The STAR study.
Yeah, famously known as the STAR study. And this isn't just an anecdotal survey where teachers are sitting around saying, hey, fewer kids would be nice.
No, this was rigorous.
Right, this was a massive longitudinal study with hard data.
And the methodology of the STAR study is fascinating because it was rigorously controlled. They tracked thousands of students from kindergarten all the way through third grade. Yeah, and they randomly assigned them to either small classes, which were around 13 to 17 students, or regular classes of 22 to 25.
And the results weren't just a marginal bump in test scores, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about massive, sustained gains in literacy and math.
Huge gains.
But the detail in the notes that really caught my eye, and I think you'll agree, was the impact on remediation.
Yes, that's huge.
Students in those smaller classes had a significantly reduced need for remediation later in their academic careers.
Which is the real long-term economic and psychological payoff. I mean, remediation is incredibly expensive for a district.
Because it takes extra staff, right?
Exactly. Pulling a kid out of a standard class to put them in, say, an intensive reading recovery program requires specialized staff, special materials, just more resources.
And there's a psychological toll on the kid, too.
Oh, absolutely. Psychologically, it labels the student, which can deeply impact their self-efficacy.
Yeah, they feel like they're the dumb kid.
Right, exactly. But by catching the learning gaps early in a class of 17, you basically prevent the snowball effect of academic failure.
It makes you think of an analogy. I mean, imagine you're at a crowded theater watching a movie. There are 100 people in there.
Okay, yeah.
If you stop paying attention, if you pull out your phone, or if you just completely zone out, nobody knows.
Right, you're invisible.
Exactly. You can easily hide in the crowd. The movie just keeps playing.
Yeah.
But if you are at an intimate dinner party with just 6 people and you pull out your phone or zone out,
Oh, everyone notices.
the entire dynamic of the room shifts. Everyone notices. You are required to engage. A class of 34 is the dark theater. A class of 17 is the dinner party.
I love that. That is a perfect visualization of the personalized instruction factor.
It really paints a picture.
It does, because it's not merely about having fewer physical bodies in the room to bump into or, fewer papers to grade. It completely changes the behavioral architecture of the room.
Right.
In the dinner party scenario, the teacher actually has the time to close the feedback loop.
Right. Closing the loop. Because handing back a test with a big red X on it, that isn't teaching.
No, a red X is an autopsy.
An autopsy, wow.
Yeah. It tells you the patient died, but it doesn't help the patient.
That's dark, but true.
Right. In a small class, the teacher can actually sit next to the student, watch them work through the equation in real time, and say, I see where you're getting stuck. You're reversing the order of operations on this specific step.
They catch it right in the moment.
Exactly. They can adapt their teaching style to different learning modalities at the exact moment of confusion.
And the classroom dynamics shift to support that, right? I mean, the notes mention that in smaller classes, there are fewer distractions.
Oh, yeah.
You can't be the class clown in the back row if there is no back row.
That's a great point.
And the long-term impacts of this environment are staggering. Like, research from the National Council of Teachers of English shows that small classes in the early years don't just boost third-grade reading scores.
No, it goes way beyond that.
Right. They lead to higher high school graduation rates, and they even measure improved citizenship down the line.
Which is incredible.
It is. We are talking about building better humans because they learned how to exist in a supportive, closely monitored community early on.
They learn how to navigate peer relationships with an adult who actually has the bandwidth to mediate and guide them.
Instead of just crowd control.
Exactly. Rather than an adult who is just forced into doing crowd control for 35 highly energetic kids.
So this brings up a glaring, really frustrating question. And I'm asking this on behalf of everyone listening right now.
Go for it.
If we have the empirical data, if we have the STAR study, if we know that 17 is the magic number to build better citizens and reduce long-term costs,
Yeah.
why is my kid sitting in a room of 32 right now?
It's the million-dollar question.
Like, what is the structural bottleneck preventing this obvious solution?
The bottleneck is, unfortunately, entirely disconnected from pedagogy.
Of course it is.
It is purely an economic mechanism. Public education in many districts is treated less like a greenhouse for human development and more like an instructional delivery system.
An instructional delivery system.
Yeah.
Wow, that phrasing sounds like a supply chain logistics manual or something.
It really does.
Yeah.
And it operates very much like a supply chain, driven by a hyper-focus on efficiency rather than holistic growth.
Right.
If we look at the cascading costs of reducing class sizes, the financial reality becomes clear pretty quickly. Let's say a district has a grade level of 100 students.
Okay.
At 33 students a class, you need 3 teachers. That means 3 salaries, 3 sets of health benefits, 3 pensions, and 3 physical rooms.
Okay, so if you want to drop that to 20 students a class, just to get closer to the magic number of 17,
Right.
you suddenly need 5 teachers.
Which means you don't just need 2 more salaries and benefit packages stretching into perpetuity. You need physical infrastructure.
Oh, right. Where do you put them?
Exactly. You have to build 2 more classrooms. You might need an entirely new wing on the building.
Which isn't cheap.
No. And that requires passing a municipal bond, which requires raising local property taxes.
And property taxes are the mechanism that traps lower-income districts in this cycle.
Always.
If a district doesn't have a high commercial or residential tax base, they simply cannot generate the revenue to build the new wing or hire the extra staff.
They are structurally trapped. State funding formulas often lag way behind the actual inflationary cost of operation.
So what do the administrators do?
They look at their spreadsheets and realize the only variable they can control to balance the budget is the staffing ratio. They maximize the number of students per teacher just to keep the lights on.
Let me push back on this administrative logic for a second, just playing devil's advocate. A school board member looking at those same spreadsheets might argue, look, a master teacher, someone who really knows their subject inside and out, can stand at the front of the room and deliver an incredible lecture to 30 kids just as easily as 15. The information being transmitted is exactly the same.
And that right there is what we call the efficiency fallacy.
The efficiency fallacy, okay.
Yeah. And it is one of the most destructive assumptions in modern education. It assumes that education is merely the transmission of audio data from one mouth to 30 sets of ears.
Like downloading a file.
Exactly. If that were true, the board member would be correct. Lecturing scales infinitely. You can lecture to 1,000 people in an auditorium or 1,000,000 people on YouTube, but
right?
lecturing is not teaching.
So what is the mechanical difference then between lecturing and teaching in a room of adolescents?
Well, lecturing is broadcasting. Teaching is an active, multi-directional feedback loop.
Okay.
Teaching involves constant behavioral management. It involves reading the micro-expressions of the room to see who is silently confused.
Oh, the silent confusion. That's a big one.
Right. It requires adjusting the pacing on the fly, mediating interpersonal conflicts between desks, and providing the individualized real-time feedback we discussed earlier.
You can't scale that.
None of those actions scale. When you double a class size from 15 to 30, you don't just double the number of essays to grade.
Right.
You exponentially increase the complexity of the social dynamics and the friction in the room.
And what's wild to me from reading these notes is the policy gaps allowing this to happen.
Okay.
I mean, you'd think there would be universal state laws capping this.
You would think so.
Like a fire code for the mind, you know? You can only put so many bodies in a room before the intellectual oxygen runs out.
I like that analogy. But the reality is some states do have loose caps, but there are often loopholes for financial hardship.
Ah, always a loophole.
Always. Or the caps just don't apply to specific core subjects. If there is no strict legal ceiling, the ceiling basically becomes whatever the physical drywall can hold.
And this hyper-focus on factory model efficiency, treating schools like an industrial delivery system with these bloated classrooms,
Yeah,
it has completely snapped the people trying to run the machine.
it has.
We're looking at a massive labor crisis. Papa Bear's notes detail a true mass exodus.
The statistics on this are sobering, honestly, and they reveal the breaking point of the entire system.
Let's lay out the numbers. Nationwide, there are an estimated 56,000 vacant teaching positions.
That's 56,000 empty desks at the front of the room.
Yeah. But the number that should really alarm people, and here's where it gets really interesting, is this. 350,000 classrooms are currently staffed by underqualified or out-of-field educators.
We need to analyze the physical logistics of that.
Yeah, please.
350,000 classrooms where the adult in the room lacks the full credentialing or subject matter expertise.
I want to think about what that actually looks like on, say, a Tuesday morning. This isn't just a substitute teacher popping in a movie for a day.
No, not at all.
This is a long-term situation where a school couldn't find a certified physics teacher, so they put a well-meaning adult with a generic emergency credential in charge of AP Physics for the entire year.
And the systemic breakdown in that scenario is catastrophic. The adult might be trying their absolute best, but they haven't been trained in the specific pedagogy of the subject.
Right, they don't know how to teach it.
Exactly. Nor have they been trained in advanced behavioral management. So the quality of education drops precipitously.
That makes total sense.
And importantly, this crisis isn't spread evenly.
Right. Where is it hitting the hardest?
It disproportionately devastates lower income and rural districts, and it's particularly acute in special education and STEM fields. It deeply exacerbates existing societal inequities.
But why is this happening? Like, why are we missing hundreds of thousands of qualified teachers? Papa Bear's insight here, I think, completely reframes the narrative.
It does.
He argues we have to stop treating this as a recruitment issue. It's not that young people don't want to become teachers. It's that the system is chewing up and destroying the ones who are already there. It is a severe burnout crisis.
And the source material breaks this burnout crisis down into 3 distinct pillars. It goes far beyond the old cliche of teachers complaining about low pay.
Yeah, it's way deeper than that.
It's a complex psychological unraveling.
Let's walk through these 3 pillars. Pillar 1 is disrespect and scrutiny. The notes call it the blame game.
Yeah, the blame game. Teachers are experiencing a profound systemic loss of professional autonomy.
How so?
Well, they earn their degrees, they pass rigorous credentialing exams, but once they enter the building, they report feeling silenced and micromanaged.
Wow.
They are treated as glorified babysitters or customer service representatives rather than highly trained experts in human development.
And the blame game seems to be this phenomenon where society uses teachers as a sponge for all its broader frustrations.
Exactly.
The notes mention forums like Reddit where educators anonymously post about this emotional toll.
Yeah, you see it all the time on those boards.
I'm picturing a teacher sitting at their kitchen table at 9 p.m., receiving a highly aggressive email from a parent, blaming them for a child's failing grade.
When the child has missed like 20 days of school.
Exactly. And the teacher has to absorb that aggression and draft a perfectly neutral, non-defensive response because they have 0 institutional protection.
And that emotional labor is exhausting.
It's out of.
When society doesn't offer basic respect for the profession, and parents or politicians view teachers as adversaries rather than partners, the psychological drain leads directly to burnout.
That brings us to pillar 2, the behavior and isolation crisis.
This is a heavy one.
Yeah. The notes describe unmanageable classrooms, extreme emotional dysregulation, violence, and severe apathy. But it makes me think, teachers are being asked to fix deeply rooted societal and familial issues, not just teach reading.
Right.
So how does the isolation factor specifically break them?
The isolation is really the mechanism of the burnout. It makes me think of a triage tent in a war zone.
Oh, a triage tent. Okay.
Imagine you are a medic in that tent. Casualties are pouring in. In this case, students carrying severe trauma, behavioral disorders, or extreme poverty.
Okay.
You are expected to treat them, but the hospital administrators haven't given you any bandages, medicine, or backup.
You're just empty-handed.
Exactly. And the administrators are standing outside the tent telling you to make sure your mortality metrics look good on paper.
That is a chilling image. It's not just a difficult job at that point. It's a moral injury.
Moral injury is the exact term. It's the psychological wound of knowing what your students need, but being structurally prevented from providing it.
Wow.
The isolation crisis is the weight of carrying these impossible situations completely alone.
Can you give an example of what that looks like in the classroom?
Sure. A teacher has a student throwing desks or exhibiting severe disruption. They call the front office for support. Nobody comes. Or worse, the administration pulls the student out for 10 minutes, gives them a piece of candy to calm them down, and sends them right back into the classroom to avoid logging a suspension statistic.
You're kidding. A piece of candy.
It happens all the time. The teacher is left feeling completely abandoned by the system they are trying to uphold.
So they're trapped in a room with a volatile situation.
Yeah.
And the people in charge actively refuse to acknowledge the fire.
Exactly.
Which transitions perfectly into pillar 3, workload and compensation. The source calls this the invisible labor.
Because the public perception of the job is limited to the hours between the morning bell and the afternoon dismissal.
Right. People see the 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. window and the summer vacation.
Yeah, they love to bring up the summer vacation.
Oh, definitely. But they don't see the teacher acting as a de facto social worker, or a mental health first responder, or even a provider of basic needs like winter coats and granola bars.
The job description has expanded exponentially to fill the gaps in the social safety net, but the compensation just hasn't moved.
Not at all.
The pay gap is a documented reality. teachers earn notably less than similarly educated professionals in other fields.
Why?
So it becomes fundamentally impossible to justify the extreme high-stress environment and the moral injury when you can barely afford rent in the district where you teach.
It's unsustainable.
Hmm.
So how are policymakers attempting to patch this massive hole in the workforce?
Well, the source outlines a few legislative pushes, which frankly read like Band-Aids on a hemorrhage.
What are they doing?
They are leaning heavily into alternative certifications and residency models. They're offering return-to-service bursaries to try and coax retired teachers back into the fray.
Basically begging people to come back.
Right. We have to look at the actual mechanics of these solutions, though. What does an alternative certification really mean in practice?
Good question.
It often means taking a 22-year-old with a biology degree, putting them through a 6-week online module, and dropping them into a room of 34 sophomores.
Do these fast-track models actually solve the root cause of the crisis, though?
They absolutely do not.
I didn't think so.
If the root cause is a toxic environment characterized by severe behavioral issues, moral injury, and structural abandonment, then fast-tracking an uncredentialed adult into that environment is just providing fresh meat for the grinder.
Fresh meat for the grinder, geez.
It's harsh, but it's true. It might temporarily plug a hole on a spreadsheet to lower the vacancy number, but that unprepared teacher is going to burn out and quit by November.
Right, because they don't have the tools.
Exactly. You haven't fixed the triage tent. You've just thrown an untrained civilian into it.
And according to Papa Bear, the toxicity of that triage tent isn't just coming from the lack of funding or state policies. He offers a deeper diagnosis here.
He does.
The rot is often coming from inside the building. The notes point a very direct finger at administrative and leadership failures, creating a localized toxic culture.
Yeah, we are shifting here from the macroeconomics of state funding down to the microculture of a single building.
Okay, let's zoom in.
Think about the ecosystem of a school. The principal sets the weather.
Sense the weather. I like that.
Right. If you have an administration that prioritizes public relations over actual learning, the entire ecosystem turns toxic.
The notes describe an environment where principals fail to back up teachers on discipline, leading to a genuinely hostile workplace.
Yes.
Makes me think of corporate middle management.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Right. Imagine working at a company where your manager is obsessed with micromanaging your documentation, checking your email timestamps, making sure your TPS reports have the right cover sheet, all that nonsense.
Yeah, the busy work.
But the second a client starts screaming at you or becomes verbally abusive in a meeting, that same manager immediately throws you under the bus, apologizes to the client, and tells you to smile more.
That analogy translates perfectly to the administrative failures Papa Bear is describing.
So what does that look like in a school?
In the school setting, the micromanagement comes in the form of inflexible top-down policies demanding endless data tracking. Teachers are spending hours logging completely arbitrary metrics.
Just to satisfy the boss.
Exactly. But when a student openly threatens a teacher or chronically disrupts the learning environment to the point where literally no other child can learn, the administration offers zero decisive consequences.
That is, deflects.
They deflect. They blame the teacher's classroom management skills. It creates an atmosphere of deep fear and self-preservation among the staff.
And when you have an environment with no consequences, you trigger what the source calls the race to the bottom.
Yes, the race to the bottom.
Let's look at the mechanics of this. How does an unchecked behavioral problem turn into systemic academic failure?
Well, it's an inevitable gravity. If a student realizes they will not face consequences for refusing to do the work or for disrupting the class, their disengagement skyrockets.
Which is just human nature, right? If there's no penalty, why try?
It's basic human nature. But the administration is under immense pressure from the district and the state to keep graduation rates high and failure rates low. It's a metric of the school's success, quote unquote. So the administration quietly pressures the teachers to lower their academic expectations.
The mechanics of grade inflation.
Exactly.
So a student turns in work that is fundamentally a 40%, but the teacher is pressured to bump it to a 60% just to pass them along so they aren't a statistical burden.
Exactly. Grade inflation masks the actual learning gaps. The instructional delivery system has to keep the assembly line moving, even if the product rolling off the line is totally defective.
That's a grim way to look at it, but it fits the data.
It does, and the integrity of the grading system just collapses, which further demoralizes the teacher who actually cares about the subject matter.
And the human toll on the faculty inside this pressure cooker is intense.
It's massive.
In a healthy professional environment, colleagues collaborate, right?
Mhm.
They share lesson plans. They vent safely to each other.
Right.
But Papa Bear says that in this toxic culture, teachers resort to survival mode. The notes describe rampant gossip, backbiting, and deflecting blame onto other departments.
Yeah, it's every man for himself.
If the administration is looking for a scapegoat, you just make sure it isn't you. It sounds like an incredibly lonely place to work.
It is. When professionals feel threatened and unsupported by leadership, they turn inward. They form defensive factions. The culture becomes entirely about surviving the day rather than educating the child.
Wow. Now, if the culture inside the building is toxic, it is being absolutely supercharged by the cultural wars raging outside the school walls.
Oh, completely.
The notes dive into the classroom battleground. And I want to be really clear for the listener here. We are looking at the data and Papa Bear's observations strictly as an analysis of the workplace environment.
Yes, strictly workplace dynamics.
We are not endorsing any political ideology here. We are just looking at how this polarization impacts the mechanical act of teaching.
And it is vital to maintain that neutrality because the data itself reveals a highly volatile situation. We are looking at the phenomenon of extreme polarization and self-censorship among public school teachers.
The numbers are jarring, honestly. According to the sources, 65% of K-12 teachers report feeling restricted from discussing sensitive social and political issues out of fear of backlash.
65%, that's huge.
Over half the workforce feels they have to walk on eggshells every time they open their mouths.
And it gets even more direct than just a general feeling.
Oh.
Yeah, 25% of teachers state they have been explicitly directed by their administration to avoid these topics entirely.
Directed by their bosses to just not talk about it.
Right. And 40% cite the intrusion of political issues into their workplace as a major job-related stressor.
But there is a massive perception gap between what the public thinks is happening and the reality inside the building.
That's true.
Studies show that adults in the general public usually view public schools as fairly balanced. However, a significant majority of Republicans report believing that the public education system heavily promotes liberal viewpoints.
And Papa Bear observes how this external political pressure creates an incredibly fraught internal dynamic among the faculty themselves.
How does that play out in the break room?
He points out that it becomes a brutal, passive-aggressive environment for teachers who hold a minority political view within their own building.
Oh, I see.
If the majority of the faculty in a specific school leans progressive and a teacher leans conservative or vice versa, and that difference is identified, the isolation compounds.
They become an outcast.
Basically, yeah. They're alienated from their own peer support system.
So you have external pressure from parents and politicians, internal pressure from your own colleagues, and zero support from administration.
That's a perfect storm.
The source brings up Michigan as a prime case study for this crossfire.
Michigan is a great example.
In Michigan, educators are trapped trying to navigate state-specific academic standards, what the law says they literally must teach,
Right.
versus incredibly diverse and sometimes hostile local community expectations regarding history, equity, and LGBTQIA+ rights.
It's a tug of war. You have the State Board of Education pulling one way, local community activist groups pulling another, the school board caught in the middle, and the teacher standing at the front of the room holding the bag.
Holding the bag. So how does a teacher actually execute a lesson plan in that environment?
Well, the source introduces this concept of zones of consideration. Teachers have to constantly map out what is safe to teach.
Let's role play this for a second to see what defensive teaching looks like.
Okay.
Imagine a high school history teacher is tasked with teaching a unit on the Civil War, or an English teacher is teaching a controversial novel that is mandated by the state curriculum, but highly contested by local parents. How do they survive that week?
The professional survival strategy is to pivot entirely from teaching what to think to teaching how to think.
Okay, what does that mean practically?
You model the analytical process. If a student brings up a highly charged contemporary political issue related to the reading, the teacher does not offer an opinion.
They just stay neutral.
Completely neutral. Instead, they offer a framework. They might say, let's look at the primary sources. What is the author's bias here? What evidence supports this claim?
Deflecting the emotion into analysis.
Yes.
Yeah.
You establish incredibly strict ground rules for structured deliberations so it doesn't devolve into a screaming match that ends up on a local Facebook group.
It's literally defensive teaching. And if a parent does call to complain, the teacher anchors their lesson directly to the institutional district mission.
Exactly. They say, I am not pushing an agenda. I am fulfilling State Standard 4.2 on source analysis.
Standard 4.2. It is a brilliant survival mechanism, but it requires an immense amount of cognitive load.
It is exhausting. You are constantly calculating the risk of every single sentence you speak. It drains the joy and spontaneity out of the classroom.
It sounds utterly exhausting. And that exhaustion brings us to the final piece of our deep dive today.
Yeah.
We've talked about the data, the budgets, the systemic failures, and the culture wars. Now we really need to look at the human toll.
This is the hardest part.
It really is. Papa Bear provided a resignation letter submitted by a former colleague of his. I want to read some excerpts from this because it grounds everything we've discussed in a single painful human experience.
It moves us from the abstract statistics back to the individual.
Exactly. So here is what this teacher wrote to their administration. While I have deeply valued the opportunity to teach and guide my students, I have made the difficult decision to step away. My time in the classroom has made it clear that current systemic structures within public education are increasingly misaligned with what our students and educators actually need to thrive.
Notice the phrasing there, systemic structure.
Yeah, they didn't point at a single issue.
Right. This teacher isn't citing one difficult class or one rude parent. They are indicting the architecture of the system itself.
The letter goes on. The mounting administrative burdens, lack of adequate resources, and the prioritization of standardized metrics over holistic, individualized student growth have made it impossible to provide the high-quality, equitable education our community deserves.
Wow.
And they finish with, I am leaving because I believe the current trajectory of the system compromises our ability to truly educate the whole child.
We need to fully absorb the meaning of this departure. This is the moral injury we discussed earlier, fully actualized.
It's brutal.
It is. This is not someone who couldn't handle the kids. This is a teacher quitting precisely because they care deeply about the kids.
Right.
And they have realized that the system they are working within actively prevents them from doing what is necessary. They are being forced by the system to prioritize the factory assembly line data, the standardized metrics, over the complex human being sitting in front of them.
And what absolutely breaks my heart reading this is the final paragraph. Even as they are resigning, the professionalism is just staggering. They write about spending their final weeks preparing comprehensive lesson plans, organizing grading records, and assisting in handing over the classroom to whoever is replacing them.
Even as they are fleeing a system that broke them, they are making sure the transition is as smooth as possible for the students.
It is the ultimate proof of that invisible labor. They are structurally abandoned, but their final act is to protect the kids from the fallout.
It's a profound loss for the profession. Every time a teacher like that leaves, the whole system gets a little weaker.
It really does. So after moving through all of this, from the physical classrooms to the budgets to the burnout, how do we synthesize this? What does this mean for you, the listener, navigating this society?
Well, if we pull all the threads together, we started with a beautiful, scientifically backed ideal.
Right. 17 students per class.
Exactly. 17 students per class, where every child is known, understood, and guided according to their natural cognitive abilities.
A greenhouse for development.
Yes. And we ended with a harsh reality where the system is actively bleeding its best, most compassionate talent.
Hemorrhaging talent.
It's bleeding them because of a toxic brew of factory model efficiency, prioritizing budgets over human bandwidth.
Yeah.
A severe lack of administrative backbone when it comes to behavioral crises, and a crushing political polarization that turns classrooms into minefields.
I want to turn this back to you, the listener. Think about your local community. Think about the school down the street from your house or the district your property taxes fund.
Are the symptoms we unpacked today visible in your neighborhood?
When you look at local school board meetings, do you see the culture wars paralyzing the administration? Do you see teacher shortages forcing combined classrooms and exhausted substitutes?
Because this isn't just a national statistical trend.
No, this is happening in your zip code.
And it leaves us with a necessary, if deeply uncomfortable, question to mull over.
What's the question?
We've seen how mass public schooling relies on standardized metrics, heavy administrative efficiency, and large class sizes simply to survive financially.
Right.
If that is the baseline requirement for the system to exist, is the dream of truly individualized, holistic education fundamentally incompatible with the public school model as it is designed today?
That is heavy.
Do we just need to tinker with the funding formulas and hire more people? Or do we need to completely reinvent what the concept of school even means?
That is a massive question to sit with. Are we trying to put a new coat of paint on a broken machine, or do we need to invent a completely new way to travel? We want to thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We started by looking for a clean break on an X-ray, but as we've seen, the realities of public education are complex, structural, and deeply human.
Thanks for listening.
Until next time, keep looking beneath the surface.